Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're going to be taking a deep dive into a topic that I think is super relevant to a lot of us out here in California, especially if you're renting. We're talking about landlord harassment, and to help us unpack all of this, we've got an expert attorney specializing in tenant rights.
It's great to be here.
I'm so glad you're here. You know, I was actually really surprised to learn that landlord harassment is like straight up illegal in California.
Oh, yeah.
There's a whole section in the California Civil Code dedicated to it.
Absolutely. It's wild how far California law goes to protect tenants.
So for those who might not know, what exactly are we talking about here? What is California Civil Code Section 1940.2 and what does it cover?
So California Civil Code Section 1940.2, that's the one that specifically addresses landlord harassment. And, it goes way beyond just like the obvious stuff, physical threats or anything like that. It really gets into any tactic a landlord might use to make a tenant feel unsafe or pressured to move out.
So it's not always as in your face as, someone getting threatened or something like that. What are some examples that people might not even realize are actually illegal?
Yeah, for sure. I think one of the biggest ones is illegal entry. Your landlord can't just barge into your apartment whenever they feel like it.
Okay, that makes sense.
Okay.
But what about if they say they just need to check something quickly?
Even then, except for emergencies we're talking, like a burst pipe or a fire, they have to give you at least 24 hours written notice, and not just any notice. It has to state the exact date and time they're coming and the reason why.
Wow, really? I didn't realize it was that strict.
It is. It's about respecting your privacy and your boundaries as a tenant. And if they don't follow those rules, document it. Take note of it, because even a seemingly harmless pop-in could be part of a bigger pattern of harassment, right?
That's a really good point. It's easy to brush those things off, but it sounds like they can actually be a red flag. Are there other kind of sneaky tactics landlords might use?
Yeah, absolutely. Another big one is property interference. They can't just mess with your belongings. Taking or removing your things without your permission is a huge no-no.
So like what, coming home and your furniture's gone?
I mean, sadly, yeah, I've seen cases like that.
Oh, wow. That's like nightmare material. So it's not just about physical intimidation. It's about controlling your space and your stuff too.
Exactly. And then, of course, you have those more blatant forms of harassment, using threats and intimidation directly.
Right, like actually yelling at someone or threatening them.
Yeah, it could be anything from yelling and making aggressive demands to, actually threatening physical harm.
Oh, it's awful. I mean, are those kinds of situations common?
More common than you'd think, unfortunately. Let me give you an example. I had a client a while back who was constantly being harassed by her landlord. He would show up unannounced all the time, sometimes even bringing potential buyers for the building into her apartment without any warning.
What? That's terrible. It's such a violation.
It was a really tough situation. He also started making threats, saying he would report her to immigration if she didn't move out.
Oh my gosh. That's just awful.
It was incredibly stressful for her, and it took a huge toll on her well-being.
Yeah, I can only imagine.
It really highlights why these laws are in place, to protect people from that kind of behavior.
Absolutely. So we've talked about illegal entry, messing with your belongings, and outright threats. What are some other things that fall under the umbrella of landlord harassment that tenants should be aware of?
Think about the things that make your apartment livable, like your utilities, repairs, things like that.
Yeah.
Your landlord can't just up and decide to shut off your water or your electricity to try to, force you out.
Seriously. I mean, that just seems so extreme.
It is. And it's illegal. Same thing goes for repairs. If there's something that's actually broken, a real issue, that affects your health and safety, they can't ignore it just because they'd rather have you move out.
So if my faucet has been leaking for weeks and my landlord keeps saying they'll get to it, but they never do, that could actually be a sign of harassment.
Exactly. And that's a great example, because I think a lot of people wouldn't even think twice about that,
Yeah.
But it's about paying attention to the patterns and being like, is this normal? Or is there something else going on here?
Okay, that makes total sense. So what about more personal attacks? Does verbal abuse actually count as harassment under the law?
Oh, absolutely.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Insults, derogatory language, yelling, all of that, it creates a hostile living environment, and it's something the law takes seriously.
Wow, I never thought about it like that. So it's not just about physical actions. It's really about creating that sense of fear and intimidation, right?
Exactly. It's about making you feel unsafe and unwelcome in your own home.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So we've gone over a lot. Let's say someone is experiencing some of these things. What's the first thing they should do?
Documentation. Like, remember that client I mentioned earlier whose landlord was making threats and showing up unannounced?
Yeah.
The reason we were able to help her was that she had documented everything. That is the most important thing you can do if you think you're being harassed.
So basically, become a detective in your own apartment.
Exactly. Dates, times, detailed descriptions of each incident. Write it down if you can. Take pictures or videos. Say your landlord barges in without notice, snap a photo. Or if they're refusing to fix a broken heater, take a video.
Okay, gather all the evidence, basically. Then what do you do with it?
Next step, you want to send a formal written notice to your landlord, okay? You're outlining the behavior that is unacceptable, and you're demanding that it stops.
So put it in writing, make it official.
Exactly. And keep a copy of that notice, obviously. It just shows that you took steps to address the situation.
Right. And if it keeps happening...
What then?
Yeah, where can people go for help? Who can they turn to?
There are a few different options, and it kind of depends on the situation. For example, in LA, if you're dealing with rent stabilization or unsafe living conditions, the LAHD, the Los Angeles Housing Department, is who you want to contact.
So there are agencies that can help.
Absolutely. And for health and safety issues in general, like anywhere, your local health department can be a huge help. They're the ones who can investigate things like mold or pests, or if you're lacking heat or hot water.
Okay, that makes sense. What about if it feels more personal, like it's based on discrimination or something?
Right. That's what a California Civil Rights Department comes in. They're the ones who handle cases where someone's being targeted because of their race, their religion, disability, or other protected characteristics.
So even in those situations, you're not alone. There are resources.
Right.
But what if those agencies don't resolve the issue? Like, is there a next level?
That's where talking to an attorney, one specializing in tenant rights, becomes super crucial.
Right, so they can, help you navigate the legal system and all that.
Yeah, exactly. They can look at your situation, see if filing a lawsuit's the right move. And, the good thing is that California law, it actually provides several different paths to justice if you're a tenant dealing with harassment.
So you're not just stuck. There are ways to fight back. What are some of the legal remedies that are available for tenants in these situations?
So in California, you might be able to get what's called statutory damages, which are basically preset fines for each violation. And these can range from $2,000 to $5,000 per violation.
Whoa, so the law really does have some teeth.
It does. And on top of that, you might be able to get what are called actual damages. So that means you can get compensation for any real losses you suffered because of the harassment, like, if you had to move, if you missed work, even for emotional distress.
Right, because that stuff really adds up.
It does. It's not just about the legal side of it, it's about the impact it has on your life,
Yeah, absolutely.
And remember, a court can order your landlord to pay for your attorney's fees and court costs.
Oh, wow. That's good to know.
So you don't necessarily have to, bear the financial burden of taking legal action.
So there's a real potential for justice and accountability here.
Exactly.
This is all really helpful.
Yeah.
But what happens if things go beyond, just those annoying or intimidating tactics? Like, what if a landlord becomes actually dangerous?
Yeah, that's a huge concern. And, if you ever feel physically threatened, like if your landlord is making violent threats or showing any signs of aggression, your safety is the #1 priority.
Right. Personal safety comes first.
Absolutely. Don't hesitate to call 911 if you feel like you're in danger. And remember, document those threats. If there are witnesses, get their statements as well.
So worst case scenario, 911 is on speed dial and you're gathering all the evidence. But ideally, we want to prevent things from even getting to that point, right?
That's where being proactive is so important. Knowledge is power when it comes to dealing with landlords. The more you know about your rights as a tenant, the less likely you are to become a victim of harassment in the first place.
Okay, so knowledge is our shield, so to speak. What are some practical tips that tenants can use to protect themselves kind of from the get-go?
One simple but really powerful thing is to communicate with your landlord in writing whenever possible. Emails, text messages, even old-fashioned letters, they all create a paper trail.
So if things do go south, you have receipts to back you up.
Exactly. And always keep copies of those communications for your own records. Another thing to remember is that in California, landlords can't just waltz into your apartment whenever they feel like it, except for real emergencies like a fire or a flood. They need to give you at least 24 hours written notice before entering.
So no more surprise inspections or casual drop-ins?
Nope. And that written notice has to state the specific date and time of the visit and the reason for it. No vague excuses.
That already makes me feel a bit more secure knowing that those rules are in place. It seems like so much of this comes down to setting boundaries early on.
It's all about being a savvy tenant. If your landlord tries to push those boundaries, like entering without proper notice, don't be afraid to stand up for yourself politely, but firmly remind them of the law.
And of course, document the incident in case it happens again.
Always document. It's your best defense now. Speaking of knowing your rights, let's talk about retaliation. A lot of tenants are afraid that if they report a problem or stand up for their rights, their landlord will try to get back at them.
Yeah, that's a huge concern. Like, what if they try to evict me for speaking up?
Well, the good news is that California law specifically protects tenants against retaliation. It's illegal for a landlord to punish you for exercising your legal rights.
That's reassuring to know. So if I report a safety issue to the city, my landlord can't just turn around and evict me for it.
Exactly. And this protection isn't just for big things like reporting code violations. It also covers things like requesting repairs or even organizing with other tenants to address common concerns.
So there's like a legal safety net for tenants who are being proactive and advocating for themselves.
Absolutely. And that protection lasts for 180 days after you've taken action. So for 6 months, your landlord can't raise your rent, try to evict you, or otherwise retaliate because you asserted your rights.
That's a decent amount of time to kind of catch your breath and figure out your next move if needed. Now, you've mentioned a few times that tenants should consult with an attorney specializing in tenant rights, but at what point should someone actually seek legal advice?
It's never too early to schedule a consultation. Even if you're just feeling uneasy about something your landlord is doing, an attorney can help you understand your rights, assess your situation, and explain your options.
It's like a checkup for your tenancy.
Exactly. It can give you peace of mind and maybe even help you avoid bigger problems down the road.
I love that. A checkup for your tenancy.
Yeah.
All right. So it sounds like if anyone's dealing with something that feels off or they just want to make sure they're protected, reaching out to a tenant rights attorney is a good move.
Absolutely. A good attorney will be your advocate and guide you through the process. Now, before we wrap up, I do want to remind our listeners that there are some fantastic organizations out there dedicated to protecting tenants' rights. The California Tenant Law website is a great place to start. You'll find tons of information there, including guides to your rights, sample letters you can use to communicate with your landlord, and even links to legal aid organizations throughout the state.
That sounds incredibly useful. Are there any other resources you recommend?
Absolutely. The Housing Rights Center is another great one. They have offices in Los Angeles, Orange, and Riverside counties, and they offer a wide range of services from counseling to legal representation.
It's amazing to know that there's so much support out there for tenants.
It is. And remember, knowledge is your best defense. The more informed you are, the better equipped you'll be to navigate the sometimes, complicated world of renting and to stand up for your rights when you need to.
Well said. This has been so informative. I feel like I've learned so much about landlord harassment and what to do about it. Do you have any final words of wisdom for our listeners today?
Always remember, you have rights, you have resources, and you have the power to protect yourself. Don't be afraid to speak up. Document everything and seek help when you need it.
That's a great takeaway. And for our listeners in Orange County, Riverside, San Diego, or Los Angeles, I do want to mention that the Martinez Law Center in Santa Ana specializes in tenants' rights, including eviction defense. You can find them online at martinezlawcenter.com. They're a fantastic resource for anyone facing landlord harassment.
It's been my pleasure sharing this information with you today.
Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive into landlord harassment in California. We hope you feel empowered to create a safe and peaceful living environment for yourself.
Until next time, stay informed and stay strong.
And remember, you're not alone in this. Thanks for listening.
Call now 714-442-9741. Thank you.